Hey guys, hi, hello, welcome back to our channel. Today we are going to discuss about the case study of multiple linear regression because in the last video where we have stopped, at that time we have done the theoretical discussion, that is what is multiple linear regression, what are model assumptions, etc, etc. So I'm going to quickly take a recap of that, and then we will enter into the case study, which case study we are going to solve through using the R tool. There are many approaches to solve such a case studies. We are going to see one of the approach. Okay, but before that, let me introduce myself to those people who are attending this program for the first time or watching this channel or new to my channel. My name is Pranav Gandhi. I work as a trainer and consultant. My total industry experience is 22 plus years, and these are the various domains in which I have worked on in these all 22 years. Then these are some of my academics. You can see over here, these are certifications, and this is my LinkedIn profile, my email ID, my Facebook page, and these are my contact details. Of course, this is my contact number and WhatsApp number as well. So this is my brief introduction. I am not wasting much of your time. So let's move ahead to discuss about our today's topic, and that is we are going to see understand the case study of multiple linear regression. Sorry guys, I have not changed this slide, so actually it should have been the case study of multiple linear regression analysis. Alright then, let's begin with it. So before getting into this case study, I would like to do a quick recap of what we have learned till now as far as multiple linear regression is concerned. So henceforth, what I think is that I will close on, or let me put down this window over here. Okay, and this should be about this. All right. So what we have seen or understood in the last session, that what is multiple linear regression, right? So what is multiple linear regression? Before that, we have seen the theoretical discussion on simple linear regression and also seen the case study on simple linear regression, right? So in simple linear regression, what happens, or in linear regression, what happens rather, your y will be always continuous. Your x in simple linear regression used to be single, but in multiple linear regression it will be multiple. Okay, your x can be continuous or can be discrete. If it is a discrete, then you have to convert it into the dummy variables. How to convert, we will see with an example, right? So this is how multiple linear regression, I mean these are the preliminaries of multiple linear regression, these are the requirements. So whenever we have such conditions, like whenever we have such variables like my y is continuous and my x's are either continuous or discrete, I want to predict the continuous value, and I want to write a prediction modeling when there are multiple x's available, then we can go for multiple linear regression. Now if my x, one of the x is discrete, okay, suppose my x variable, one of the input variable is called make of car, okay, or maybe color, or color of car, you can say color of car, okay, or maybe it can be anything, I mean any categorical variable may be available there in your data set, right? So if suppose this is your variable, and if these are the data points which it contains, that is your car can be petrol, diesel, CNG and LPG, right? And these values are repeating again and again depending upon the records or data sets available. Now in such scenarios, because we are talking about regression, I have told in all my earlier videos about regression as well, that whenever we are writing a regression model doesn't understand text values, right? So we have to convert them into the numerical values. So that process is called as creating a dummy variable. So now my make of car is having these four values. So what I can do is I can create four dummy variables for each of that value. That is for petrol, for diesel, for CNG and for LPG. Wherever in the record the petrol data is present, or petrol text is present, or petrol value is present, okay, I will assign 1 to the dummy variable petrol for that particular record, and 0 to all remaining columns. Similarly, wherever there is a diesel present, I will take one as diesel for diesel, okay, for diesel variable, dummy variable, and rest of the values will be zeros. And similarly, I will do it for all the records available with me. Suppose even if I have 10,000 records, okay, I will convert all those petrol and diesel and CNG and LPG values into zeros and ones like this. And this process is called as creating dummy variables. Now, once your dummy variables are created, okay, before getting into the case study, I have discussed model assumptions as well. So this is a very, very important slide which we have discussed in our last session, right? I'm just going to quickly recap about this. So model assumptions there are 4 model assumptions you can say predominantly it will be used, okay. Number 1 is your model has to be linear in parameters. Parameters are nothing but my beta naught, beta 1, beta 2 values, okay. My x1, x2, x3 are my variables. This is my output variable. x1, x2, x3 are my input variable, and all beta values will be my parameters, right? And of course my model will always have an epsilon, because this is nothing but my error, right? So whenever we write any model, of course we cannot assure that there will be 100% accuracy we can get as far as predictions are concerned, and predictions 99.99 times won't be accurate, okay. So there will be always an error, okay. That error will be always denoted by this epsilon. Alright, the second assumption is assumptions about the errors. My errors of my models has to be having these properties, okay. My errors should be IID normal. What is IID? Independently and identically distributed. My errors should have zero mean. Why zero mean? Because we are talking about a linear regression. My data points can be on this side of the line and this side of the line, okay, and this line is my regression line. So all my predicted values are lying on this line. The difference between the actual value and my predicted value, that difference we are terming as error, and these errors can be on both sides, right? So if I am calling this as my best fit line or a regression line, okay, then this can be only best fit line when I have a zero mean, a zero average for the error, right? Then my error should having the constant variance, which means homoscedasticity, okay. If there is no constant variance for my errors, then it is called as heteroscedasticity. And all these are your interview questions, so these terminologies are very, very important, right? My errors should be independent of each other. If they are not independent, then it is called as they are having an autocorrelation problem. Autocorrelation is nothing but the correlation with itself, right? Now we have seen what is homoscedasticity and heteroscedasticity in the last session as well. I'm going to show you again the difference between these two, okay, after this slide. Okay, now the third assumption about the model is about the predictors. Predictors are nothing but my variable, input variables, my x's, x1, x2, x3, okay. So what are the assumptions about my all x's, all my input variables? That my input variables should be non-random, they should be measured without an error, right? We have seen all these examples. And then the third one will be, they should be, this is most important one, linearly independent of each other. The meaning of this is, if I have x1, x2, x3 in my data, or x4 or x5 and so on xn, okay, all these x's should be linearly independent of each other, which means my x1 should be linearly independent, which means there should not be any linear relationship between x1 and xn, or x1 and x2, or x2 and x3, or x3 and x1, or x3 and x5, and all x's with each other, right? This is assumption number 3 for predictors, and this is very, very important. This is we are going to examine in our case study today, okay. Then my assumptions about observations. What are observations? Observations are nothing but all my records in the data, rows, okay. Like we have columns, we also have rows. So all those rows are also called as observations or records, right? So they should be equally reliable. Of course, I mean, if the data is not reliable, then how can we do the modeling, right? So let us see. Let me show you the difference between homoscedasticity and heteroscedasticity. So this is the chart of homoscedasticity, and this is a chart of heteroscedasticity, and these all black dot points are nothing but my errors of the model. So if suppose I have 1000 records or observations, then I will get 1000 errors because I'm going to predict 1000 values through my model, right? So whatever I am predicting, so my actual value will be there from historical data minus my predicted value is going to be my error. Suppose I want to, I have actual value from the historical data that the salary of a person is 10,000, but my model has predicted it something like 8,500, which means my model has predicted the error, predicted the wrong value for the salary, and the difference between this is going to be my error, which is 1,500 rupees or dollars in my that particular observation, right? So I'm going to get, if I'm having 1000 observations like such with actual figures, I'm also going to have 1000 of the predicted values, and the difference between them will be 1000 errors. So when I plot these errors, okay, there are some plotting mechanisms or functions. Then if I should get this type of a diagram. The meaning of this is it is having a constant variance. Okay, this is not having a constant variance over here, you can see, right? It is having some sort of a trend or something like what you can say, some sort of a, you can see this. I mean, it is creating a funnel shape. You may have something like this as well. You may have it, okay. But then the thing is that what we need to have is we need to have a constant variance. The boundaries of both side errors, the boundaries which are accumulating both sides errors should be almost around equivalent distance from the mean of the errors. This is the definition of homoscedasticity. So we need to have our model should, when we call our model is good, when we have such error plot. Okay, if we are getting such error plots, then they are called as heteroscedasticity, right? All right, then let's get into the case study. So this was just a brief recap of what we have understood from our earlier sessions as far as multiple linear regression is concerned. Now let us understand today's case study. Here our interest is to model the MPG. What is MPG? Miles per gallon, which means in our terms, in India they call it as, we call it as average, right? Average of a car, okay? So fuel average of a car based on the other variables. So which are the other variables given to us? So volume is given to us. Volume is nothing but the cubic feet of a cap space. Horsepower is given to us, which is engine horsepower. SP is given to us, which is the top speed. Every car has a top speed limit, okay? So miles per hour it can go. And the weight of the vehicle, okay, which is in hundreds of pounds. This data belongs to cars.csv, okay? This is available in R itself. I mean, the R tool have a lot of data sets available for doing the analysis or practice or understanding of the how it works, right? So these are the four variables, 1, 2, 3 and 4, and this is going to be my fifth variable, which is my y. So maybe this one is x1, this one is x2, this one is x3 and this one is x4. So based on these x1, x2, x3 and x4, okay, the data for this is given to me. Okay, based on these four variables, I want to predict the y variable. That is my MPG, average miles per gallon. So let's look into the case study. So let me open the R tool, and now I'm going to close down my video because R will not, I mean, the thing is that it will appear somewhere here. So some visual appearances which is required to be here as far as this global environment is concerned will be blocked. So I have closed down my web camera. Alright then, So as I said that this data is also available in R environment itself. So if I want to take it from R environment, I will simply say data empty cars, okay, and then view the data set. But what I'm going to do is I have downloaded this data set in my system. So I'm going to call this data set by using read.csv function, and I'm saying file.choose, which means I want to choose the file and select the data set. So this is the data set where there are 81 observations given to us. So there are 81 records are there, okay, and all these records, if you see all the values, if you see, these are all continuous values, because horsepower is a continuous, you can express it into decimals. MPG is a continuous, of course, you can express it in decimals, and the data also given in the decimals. Volume is obviously can be expressed in decimals because it is a cubic feet space, right? Then SP, that is top speed, speed can be expressed in decimals, and weight also can be expressed in decimals. So we have seen in our very first lecture that whenever we are able to express our data into decimal format, then that becomes our continuous data. So we have the continuous data, and our output variable MPG is also continuous, which means we can go ahead and build the linear regression model, okay. And as there are a lot of access available, so we can go for multiple linear regression model. And number 3 is there is no discrete value available over here, so we don't need to create any dummy variable over here, right? So we have total 5 variables, out of which 4 are inputs and 1 is output. So we have seen the data set. Now I am going to attach the data set cars so that I can directly access all these variables. I don't have to use the dollar symbol. I mean, all these basics we have already covered. Library moments I am importing just to show you. We try to calculate skewness and kurtosis of the data set, right? And now I'm going to assume that we have done all this exploratory analysis as we have done in our simple linear regression, that is plotting all the bar plots, box plots, looking at first moment, so second moment, third moment, fourth moment of business decisions, the measures of central tendencies and measures of dispersions, right, probability distribution, etc., etc. All this we have done is what I can, I'm just going to assume, because we know that whenever we are into the project cycle, then almost 70 to 80% of the time we spend doing all this exploratory data analysis, right? So I'm quickly going on to look into the summary of the data, which tells me what is the minimum value of each and every variable, what is the maximum value of each of every variable, which gives me the range of the data. Then I can have the box plot information, something like first quartile, third quartile, mean and median, right? So all this information about all the variables we have, we can do the analysis that how MPG is affecting or something like that, or what are the ranges of these data points or all these variables, what are the values they are carrying, right? So all that, as I said, comes under exploratory data analysis, something like plotting histogram. Okay, so I can plot a histogram for all the variables and look at the distribution of the data. Okay, then I can calculate the skewness, and as we know, if we get the positive skewness, which means the long tail of the data is towards right side, right? So as I said that we assume that we have done, because we have less time over here, so we assume that exploratory data analysis has been done already. Okay, something like plotting, I mean checking the correlation between each of the variables, etc., etc., by looking at the plot and all. So if I plot HP and MPG, for example, right? So HP is on my x-axis, MPG is on y-axis. So this is the distribution look like. You can see over here it's going down, which means as my x increases, my y decreases, which means there is a negative correlationship between HP and MP. But yes, then because there is a negative correlationship, we are not sure whether it is poor, moderate, or for that we have to see the objective measure by checking the correlation coefficient. But then if you can see over here from the picture, then yes, definitely we can say that HP is going to help us in some amount to predict the MPG. That's what the meaning of this scatter plot is. So we can check the correlation with HP, and HP it's always going to be 1. With any variable with itself is always going to be 1. So HP and MPG, if I want to see, then it is minus 0.72, which is represented by this particular plot in the right bottom corner, right? So the thing is that we can say that HP is having a moderate correlationship with MPG. Similarly, we can check for weight and look at that the scatter is presented in such a way that we are not sure whether there is a relationship or not, because for one single value of x there are multiple values of y. Okay, so maybe at times the y is not changing for the same value of x, so which means we have to check the correlation coefficient, which is minus 0.52. So as we know, when we were learning the scatter plot and correlation coefficient, that time we have seen that if the correlation coefficient is somewhere between 0.5 and 0.85, then we say that it is moderately correlated variables, or the two variables are having moderate correlation. But if it is closer to 0.5 anywhere, then it is actually going towards a poor correlation. Similarly, we can see it for volume versus weight. Okay, so why I am checking it not with MPG? Because we also have to check whether the one variable, one input variable is also having a correlation with another input variable or not. Because what we have learned in model assumptions is that no two input variables should have a correlation, linear, or they should not be linearly correlated, right? And here, if we see, the volume and weight are having extremely strong relationship with each other, and that is a linear relationship. So as volume is increasing, weight is increasing, which means our model assumptions is going to be fail over here. Okay, so let us check another variable, or before that we can check the correlation coefficient also for volume and weight, and you see over here almost 1. Okay, it is almost going to be 1, which means that volume and weight are going to give us some kind of a trouble as far as model building is concerned. Let us understand another variable, volume versus MPG. Okay, so this relationship you can see, this is also not looks good. Okay, let us check the correlation coefficient of volume and MPG, and it is also minus 0.52, which means that volume and weight are not having a very good relationship with MPG. So we are doubtful about whether we can go ahead and use these variables to predict the model, predict the MPG value or not. Okay, now let us look at the plot between HP and SP. Oh my God, they are also having a very good relationship with each other. Okay, and it is also a very strong relationship, linear relationship, and these are also two input variables. So from the scatter plot we have got that, and from correlation coefficient also we have seen it is almost close to 1. That is a very strong relationship is there between HP and SP. So up till now what we have understood from the given data set, okay, and the business problem, that we have to predict the MPG, whereas the input variables are HP, SP, weight and volume, and all these 4 variables are having a linear correlationship with each other, means in pairs. So volume is having it with weight and HP is having it with SP. Alright then. So this we have checked from individual plotting or something like that. So there is one function called pairs. So if I use that pairs of cars, it gives me an entire plot of all the variables. So it is a fantastic function to have, wherein we can see the linear relationship with the scatter plot between HP and MPG, HP and volume. Okay, so this is the plot, this plot where my mouse is, I'm hovering, right? So this plot is between HP and MPG. This plot is between HP and volume. This is between MPG and volume. This is between MPG and SP. This is between weight and volume. This is between SP and weight. This is between HP and SP. Okay, so and you see over here exactly a mirror image is plotted over here. So we can either go for this side or this side, any side we can refer to check the correlation between the two variables. So if I have multiple variables, I can simply, instead of plotting one by one, okay, I can plot it all of them together. So this is a fantastic function to have. And similarly for correlation coefficient, instead of having it between two variables, we can have something called as correlation matrix. Okay, so for the same core function, I can directly give the entire data set and it gives me the correlation matrix, correlation coefficient matrix. And these are the values which we have seen already, 9738481, suppose, between HP and SP. You can see it over here, HP and SP, 9738481. Okay, so this matrix is very helpful. So instead of, if suppose I have 10 variables, instead of plotting each variable with each other, I can simply have a matrix of it, and I can, from there I can see that volume and weight is having very strong relationship, or this thing SP and HP is having very strong relationship. Okay, and this diagonal is the variable with itself, okay, which is always going to be 1. So these two functions, these two methods are very, very helpful. There is one more function in the library called ggally. Okay, so it gives me, and the function is ggpairs. It gives me, this is such a fantastic representation where I am also getting the histogram, I am also getting the scatter plot. These dots are nothing but the scatter plot. These are my histograms, and I am also getting the correlation coefficients over here. Right? So all three at one go also can be achieved. In pairs we can see it. Right? So these are some of the advanced functions. Now we have understood that there is a problem between HP and SP and weight and volume, because they are having a linear correlation between each other. So there is one more way to look at the pure correlation, or we can say partial correlation matrix, okay, between the variables, which means that this correlation matrix which we have already plotted is having, suppose I'm referring this value between HP and SP. So this value has been calculated with an impact or with the presence of other variables. Okay, but when I am talking about the partial correlation matrix or pure correlation, then I am talking about only HP and SP, or only volume and weight, or only volume and MPG. So no other variable is influencing the result of the relationship. So that function is called as core to pcore. Okay, so correlation to partial correlation. Okay, or correlation to pure correlation. So the library is core pcore, which I have invoked over here, and now I am going to pass on this entire matrix which we have got over here. Okay, this matrix complete. So I am passing that entire matrix to core to pcore function, and it is going to give me another matrix which is a pure matrix, pure correlation between any two variables. Now you see here 0.97 was between HP and SP, has come down to 0.94 because the other variables are not influencing over here. Similarly, weight and volume was having 0.999, something like that, has come down to 0.998. So no significant change happened over here, which means that here is another doctor's confirmation that yes, they are involved in linear correlation between each other, and that is a problem. So our model assumption says that my predictors should not have, where are my model assumptions? So our model assumption says they should be linearly independent of each other. If they are not, then there is a collinearity problem. So what we are facing over here is a collinearity problem between volume and weight, HP and SP. But having so, though I have, it has been confirmed by the scatter plot and correlation matrix or correlation coefficient, I am still going ahead and building a model, and which is a basic model, I would call it, okay, wherein I am taking all the variables. So my Y variable MPG tilde, volume, HP, SP, weight, all the variables, my data set cars, okay, I am passing this to LM function and building a model. Similarly, this model I can also write it in this fashion, right? So this is the first example of multiple linear regression we are looking at, where, and that's why I am explaining this, that MPG tilde dot means all the input variables. The meaning of this is all the input variables. So I can write it in this way, or I can write it in this way as well. Okay, so I will show you both the model summary, and you will see there is no difference between model.core and model.car underscore all, right? So look at the R square over here, 0.7705, and look at the weight. So the p-value of weight coefficient for weight is 0.8136. You also see it over here, 0.8136 and 0.7705. Another value you can check, the coefficient here 30.67, the intercept here is 30.67734. Here also it is same. So both the models are same over here. I can write it in this fashion or this fashion, right? All right then. Then once we write the model, okay, we can also write the equation, and this is going to be my equation. What is going to be my equation? MPG, because that is my Y value, is equal to 30.67734 plus means actually it is going to be minus, right? Minus 0.20544 minus 0.33605 into volume, this is into HP, and plus 0.39563 into SP plus 0.40057 into weight, and that is going to be give me the MPG value for each of my record. This exercise we have already seen when we were discussing about simple linear regression, right? So this is how we write the equation, because my equation is y equal to beta naught plus beta 1. Look into the console, beta 1 into my x1 variable, which is maybe in this case HP, then beta 2 into my x2 variable, that is second variable, maybe it is volume in this case, B3, beta 3 into, it's going to be SP, and so on, right? So this is going to be my equation for multiple linear regression. This is what we have written over here, and then by replacing every value from every record for HP, volume, SP and weight, we will get the value for MPG for that particular record. That will be my predicted value or fitted value, you can say, and this is my original value. So difference between this value and that value over here is going to be my error term. This we have explained in simple linear regression, so I am not putting in more time, or maybe one of the model I will take it in that way. We will write the equation as well. All right, then what happened over here is my model is, I have written the model, but the thing is that my R square is 0.7705, which is at least, 0.80 or above. We can, even this R square is good, but the problem over here is the aspect what we are learning, a different aspect over here than simple linear regression, because in simple linear regression we stopped when we got 0.78 as a R square value, which was almost close to this value, right? And that was a very good model which we have written. So this also, by taking this also, we can write a model, but the problem over here is the p-value is not significant. As we have learned that the probability value for the given coefficient for volume and weight, as you can see over here, are 0.55 and 0.81 respectively, which should be lesser than 0.05. Like this is less than 0.05, less than 0.05, less than 0.05. So similarly, these two values should have been less than 0.05, but it is not, right? And these are the significant codes. You can see the star marks given for each and every p-value as well. So when they are not significant, that means, see, our approach is should be like this, that HP and SP is also having a collinearity problem. Volume and weight is also having a collinearity problem. But what is the problem we are having over here with volume and weight? That collinearity can also be accepted, like in such case like HP and SP, it can be accepted if at least the coefficients what we are getting for the respective variables are significant. But if you are having a collinearity and because of that the coefficients are also not becoming significant, then that is a problem. So what I am going to check is whether if I take the volume individually to predict the MPG, is it contributing, am I getting significant probability value for its coefficient. Yes, I am getting it. Look at that, 3 star I have got, which means volume is, if I take alone, then volume is uh, extremely helpful in prediction of MPG. If I take weight alone, then again if you see, yes, it is also becoming extremely significant, which means it tells us that if we take volume and weight separately, then they are contributing in the prediction of MPG. But if I take them together, then my probability values are going up like this. They are not significant. Okay, and that's the problem. So this is the third confirmation which we have got. Okay, why we are not worried about SP and HP? Because they are their probability value for the coefficients are significant. That is why we are accepting that relationship. Okay, but we are not ready to accept the volume and weight relationship. So how to reconfirm it? So there are a lot of different approaches to confirm the volume and weight. And now once we have confirmed that volume and weight are in collinearity, and because of that they are also not becoming significant in prediction of MPG, then what we can do is we can check who is the most culprit among them. Is it volume or weight, right? To do that, there are two different parameters we have. One is called as VIF value, okay, which is also called as variance inflation factor. It actually measures the degree of collinearity. It actually measures the degree of collinearity between the two variables, okay? And the formula for that is 1 by 1 minus R square. Now this R square is going to be from these models. So while checking or calculating the VIF value, what we have to do is we have to take each and every input variable as an output variable, and remaining input variables, I am talking about remaining input variables. So here you will see that there is no MPG available. Okay, so 1 by 1 input variable I am going to take as output variable, and remaining 3 variables will be my input variable. Once I write the model, obviously from summary I am going to get the R square for that particular model. Now that R square I am going to replace it over here in this particular formula, and that the result of this calculation is going to be the VIF value for the output variable volume. Similarly, if I take HP over here and volume here, this side, volume, SP and weight will be input variable, HP will be output variable. Again, I will write a model. Model will give me R square value. I am going to put it in this formula, and the value which I get from this calculation will be the VIF value for HP. Similarly, I will write 4 models and get the 4 VIF value. But here in this case, we don't have to do it manually, because in R, we are having a function called VIF. Okay, so library is car. I am invoking that library. This car is different and this car is different. This is a data set and this is a package, right? So I have invoked that package, and from that package I am using VIF function and passing my model to it. So what is my model? Model.car. This is my first model, right? Where is that? This one. Okay, so this main model I am going to pass on to this VIF function, and what I am going to get is the VIF values for all the 4 input variables. Now here one condition is there, that my VIF has to be less than 10. My VIF value has to be less than 10. If it is less than 10, then I can say that that variable is contributing, what you can say, maybe contributing towards the prediction of MPG in a very good manner. If VIF is greater than 10, then we call it as there exists a collinearity among all the variables. And now you see over here, all the VIF values are greater than 10, right? So why they are greater than 10? Because there is a collinearity between HP and SP, because all the 4 variables are involved in the collinearity, right? And that is why the VIF values are greater than 10. So our target is they should be at least close to 10 or lesser than 10. So this is one more aspect or one more way of looking at who is the culprit. Now among these 4 values, you see weight is having the highest value, which means Weight is the one variable which is giving me the problem in the model writing or model predictions, or it is going to increase my errors, right? So first of all, we have checked with the plotting of scatter plots between all the variables. Then we have checked it with correlation matrix. After that, we have checked it with VIF values. Okay, and then now we have almost confirmed that the most culprit over here in this particular example is weight. But then let us reconfirm it by plotting a AV plot. It is called added variable plot. This is another way to check the correlation between input variables and output variables, right? So I'm going to plot the added variable plot. It is going to tell me which variable is contributing towards the prediction of MPG and which variable is contributing least towards the prediction of MPG, right? So HP is fantastic because you should always have a slope between the relationship of two variables. Then we can say that they are having a very good correlation between each other, right? So HP is contributing, SP is contributing. There is a problem with volume and weight, but when we are talking about the least contributor, you can see a small gap over here, which means that there is at least a slope between volume and MPG. But for weight and MPG, the slope is the minimum among the four. Okay, so this is again reconfirmation of that the weight is a culprit over here. Now what we can do after finalizing this, that weight is the one variable which is giving me the trouble or problem in my model building. So I can drop the variable. So dropping a variable is the easiest task actually, right? So, but that is not the good option, because if I drop the entire weight column and only take HP, volume and SP to predict the MPG, then what I am doing over here is I am missing on 81 entries, because weight is having 81 entries over here. So instead of missing on 81 entries, can I check whether there is a possibility of maybe one of the value of weight is outlier, and because of that weight is not contributing? That is a possibility. Okay, so which of that observation is having an outlier value in weight or volume or HP and SP? Okay, or which of that observation is influencing my model building? Is there a possibility? Yes, there is a possibility. So how to check that? So to check that, we have something called as influence measures. Okay, this function is going to give me the influential observation. Okay, and look at that, the star marks are the observations which are influencing my model.car. Okay, so there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8 and 9. So 9 these observations, observation number 81, 80, 79, then 77, then 74, I guess 74, right? Yes, then 70 and 71 both, and then observation number 1, and then observation number 9. So these are the total 9 observations which are influencing my modeling basically, right? So we have seen there are total 9 observations which are influencing my model over here. So what happens over here is, why we have checked this, instead of missing on 81 values, what I can do is I can delete couple of observations which are highly influencing, right? And if I do that, then what will happen? Suppose the 9th one was also influencing, or maybe I will delete this 80 and 81 observation. Okay, so what will happen? In every observation there are 5 values, so I will miss only 10 values. So data is very important, guys, right? Data is like oil. I don't want to miss much of the data, but still I want to get a better modeling. That is why we are checking the influencing observations, right? And this can be also checked by using influence index plot. Okay, so if I pass my model over here, and if I say, because here I have got 9 observations which are influencing my model, okay, but if I want to keep them limited to 3 observations which are highly influencing, okay, then I can use the influence index plot, pass on my model name, and say ID number equal to 3. It is going to give me or show me those three observations which are highly influencing to my model. So 77, 71, you can see these two observations are there. Here again 77, right? Then here 77, here 71 and 77, and these are all, you can see these four plots are plotted on the basis of the statistical calculation by four different statisticians or scientists. Okay, so they have come up with their different formulas, and all the four plots are combined together, and all the four of them are suggesting that 71 and 77 are the most influencing observations among all the other observations, right? Some of them are also saying that observation number 1 is also influencing. So here you can see observation number 1, here also you can see observation number 1. Okay, but then the most common are 71 and 77. So because of this, what we are going to do is, and there is another plot, influence plot. Okay, so this is influence index plot. This was influence dot measures, which is going to give me the observations, influencing observations. This is also going to give me the influencing observations, but here I am restricting them to the highest influence of 3 observations. And then this is again a different kind of a plot, influence plot, which is also giving me the influential observation. So you can see this plot is also suggesting 77, 71 and 1. But 77 and 71 have been suggested by all the scientists, all the statisticians, and they are far away from the group, you can see. Okay, so these may be having some sort of outlier values over there, right? So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to only remove one value, one observation, and that is 77. Still I am becoming conservative about, you know, data, and I don't want to miss much of the data. I'm writing a different model now. This is going to be model.car1, and here I'm going to take MPG, volume, SP, HP, weight, all 4 input variables, and I have just removed one observations from here, from cars, right? So I have loosed on 5 values, but then, because every observation is having 5 values, but then look at the summary of this model, and the summary is telling me that my R-square has improved from 0.77 to 0.81, but my problem has not gone yet, right? My HP and volume are not becoming significant. My SP and HP are still significant, even after removing the 77th observation, but my volume and weight are not becoming significant. So what I am going to do is, I am going to try with deleting the 71st observation as well. So let me delete both the observations and look at the summary, and look at that. My summary from 0.8192 to 0.8162, it has gone down. My R-square value has gone down. Okay, and so if I remove the 71st observation, my R-square is decreasing. Okay, then if I remove only 77th observation, and with a decreased R-square, my problem is not solved. So why should I delete 71st observations? I will not delete that, right? So let us see that example later. But now what I'm going to do is, I have decided now, okay, this is not improving. I mean, the observation deletion is not improving. I cannot delete more than 2, 3, 4 observations, because then it is not making any sense. Okay, so let us try deleting weight column and build a model. So I'm building a model with MPG, tilde, volume, SP and HP. So this time I am not considering weight in my calculations. I am using the entire data, okay, and I am writing a final model. And what my summary suggests, and look at that. My summary is, my R-square is 0.7704. My earlier R-square was also something like 0.77 something, okay. But then here what happened, my volume is become significant because weight is not there. So the collinearity has gone with the weight and volume has become significant. So I can go with these 3 variables and write my prediction modeling. So if I suppose consider this as my final model, let me check the VIF values now for these 3 variables, and look at that volume from how much it was earlier, 638.80, weight was 639, HP at 90.92 and 20.00 is SP. So from 638, 19 and 20, these three variables have come down to 1, 19 and 19. Okay, so there is slight amount of reduction in these two, but significant amount of reduction in this, and my target was I want to take the VIF values of the variables which I am going to use as my input variables should be less than 0, less than 10, right? Okay, so VIF value have changed once I delete the weight column. Now I am going to check the influence index plot. Okay, so for this model now, the model has changed over here. Earlier it was the model.car1, now it is final model. And if you see over here, 71 and 77 is not going. 71 has gone probably here. 77 is still there, and the first observation is there. 77 is still there. 71 and 77. So all four are pointing towards the 77 now. All four are pointing towards the 77, which means 77th observation is really having some problem, right? That one confirmation we have made, and we don't want to use weight column. Okay, these two confirmations we have made till now, but let us see how we are moving ahead. All right, so after these two confirmations, or after these two decisions, okay, I mean, I have noted it down that I don't want to use, I probably won't use weight column. I probably won't go with the 77th observation. But let me check about this model performance. So what is going to be the RMSE for this model? If suppose I consider this model as my final model, then the RMSE for this model is going to be 4.34. So my business problem is to predict the MPG. So if the original value of MPG is supposed to be 50 in my historical data, okay, suppose this is the value. So instead of predicting this value, the RMSE, the meaning of RMSE is my model is going to predict 4.34% error in this value, which means on both sides there is a possibility. So either the model will predict 46 or the model will predict 54, something like this, right? So this is my RMSE. So as far as this thing is concerned, which is almost around, you can say 10%, 7 to 8%. So that is my error. Okay. So we will evaluate it later on. Now what I'm going to do is, after writing this model which has given me 0.7704 R square value and RMSE is 4.348, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the weight column and also drop the 71st and 77th column, okay, and rewrite the model and check the summary and look at that. Now this thing has increased to 0.8162. My volume has become significant, the coefficient. Okay. Now let us check the VIF value. What happens if I remove two observations and look at that? It has come down to 14 each. Earlier it was 19 each, and this was around 1 point something. But this from 19 to 14, 19 to 14 is a significant change happened over here when I drop these two observations alongside the weight column, right? So let us check the AB plot now. So because weight is not there, so you can see over here all the three variables are contributing very well in the prediction of MPG. So let us check the average of the errors. So final model _$1 residuals, which means the residuals are nothing but my errors of this particular model. I'm taking the average of those errors. It has to be 0, and yes, e to the power minus 16, which means it is approximately 0. And now I am checking the RMSE value. So RMSE is also dropped. Earlier it was 4.34 something. Now it has gone down to 3.87, which means this becomes a better final model than this one, the earlier one, right? Okay, so now let us evaluate this final model, which is final model _1, okay, with the line assumptions, which means my errors has to be normally distributed. Yes, they are normally distributed. If you see, you can see it over here, the distribution of the errors, except these two blocks. If they are not there and some part of this, then it is almost a normal distribution which I have got for the errors. And now there is one more plot I can plot by giving the model name to this plot function. Okay, this plot, actually in this plot there are 4 different plots we are going to plot. So first plot is going to give me the whether the errors are identically distributed or not. Okay, so we have seen errors are normally distributed over here, but whether they are identically distributed or not on both sides. Okay, so red line is going to be the reference line over here in this plot. Okay, then we are going to plot a QQ plot to check the errors and residuals. Okay, for not normality or not normally distributed or normally distributed. Okay, QQ plot is also checked or used like histogram to check whether the data is having normal distribution or not. Then we can check homoscedasticity or heteroscedasticity. So errors are having the constant variance or not, right? And the fourth one, we can ignore this particular plot for the time being. So let us plot one by one. So I am executing this line of code, plot final model _1, and you can see over here it is saying me that hit return to see the next plot. Okay, so I simply have to put the press the enter button over here to get the plot. And as we have seen that the red line is going to be my reference line, and this is showing me whether this plot is going to show me whether my errors are identically distributed or not. Identically means the amount of errors on this side, are we having the equal amount of errors this side? Yes, you can see out of 81 observations, 2 we have deleted, so 79 observations, around 35 this side, 35 this side, easily we can see it, right? So errors are identically distributed. Now for the second plot I have to hit it again, and now I am plotting a QQ plot over here, and you can see here also most of the errors are alongside the line or on the line, okay, except the few over here which we have seen in the histogram as well towards the right side, the two blocks. So these are the 2 blocks. Okay, so the errors are also, you can say, normally distributed. Then the third one is the homoscedasticity or heteroscedasticity. So if I consider this red line as the reference line, then what I have to do is I have to draw a parallel to this red line, something like curve like this. Okay, look at my mouse. Okay, and almost for the same distance from this, okay, if I plot a curve line like this, then it is what you can say, containing, except this 80, 79 and maybe this point and this point, except these 4-5 points, all the points will be covered in a pipe shape like this. Okay, and which means that it is giving me a constant variance as well. My errors are having a constant variance, so it is a homoscedasticity. This model is good model, we can say, right? And that is why once my modeling has been done, as far as my decisions about deletion of variable and observation deletion, etc., if I want to better the model, what are the other options I have? I can go ahead and do the transformation. We have seen 4-5 different transformation in our simple linear regression model. Okay, similarly here also we can do or try the transformation, right? So let me try one transformation over here. What I'm going to do is I'm using an output variable, and then I'm using the 3 input variables, but I'm taking the log values of these. Okay, which means I'm doing a log transformation over here for all these 3 variables. Okay, am I supposed to do only log transformation? No, I can do any mathematical calculation on the variable, and I can use n number of transformation, any transformation, as long as I will keep trying it, as long as I'll get the better results. Okay, that is the part of a research, right? So here I am taking the logs on all the 3 input variables. I am also deleting the 77th and 71st observation. I have also deleted the weight column, and MPG is my output variable, writing the final model 2, and look at the summary. And sorry, what happened? Okay, the model has not run. built it. Okay, so my final 2 model is ready, and this is my summary. So look at this, my R square has gone up to almost 0.94, and all three are having 3 stars now. They have become extremely significant, right? So this log transformation has worked on this. Have I arrived this log transformation on the first trial itself? No, probably I have tried hundreds of different options, and then I have achieved this type of accuracy. That is a possibility, right? And that's why we have to work very hard as far as when it comes to transformation, right? So if I consider this as my final model, let us check the VIF values now. So I'm passing this model now to the VIF function, and look at the VIF values. They have come closer to 10 for HP and SP, and for volume it is 1. Let us check the AB plot and look at the slopes. Wow, fantastic, isn't it? So they are extremely having a strong correlation between the output variable and all 3 input variables. Okay, let us check the average of our errors, and yes, it is again e to the power minus 17, means almost close to approximately 0. And then I'm calculating the RMSE for this model, and RMSE also has gone down to 2.22. So earlier it was 4 point something, then it has come down to 3.87, and now it has come down to 2.22, which means that if I want to consider the difference between these 2 models, okay, then how can I evaluate the models? Of course, this model is good because it is giving me the lesser RMSE, right? And the above one was giving somewhere around close to 3.87 or 4. This is 2.22, which means if my original value is 50 now, then my model is predicting either 48 or 52, which is I have come closer to the actual value. That is the interpretation of this. Now, once we have understood all this, okay, the model writing and model building as far as multiple linear regression is concerned, we have tried a lot of different techniques over here. How to avoid variable deletion, but then finally we have to delete it. Then how we have checked the influencing observations by three different plots, etc. And a lot of different plots and techniques we have understood over here, and the reasonings why to use those techniques that we have understood, right? And now let us stop here as far as model building is concerned. I'm going to take you through another interesting topic, and then again come back to the model building. Okay, and that interesting topic is called as cross validation, right? So what is cross validation? The cross validation is something which the thing is, you have been given a data. You have been given a data. Oh, what happened? Right? And I think in the last session I have explained you the complete project cycle. So today I am simply going to discuss on the cross validation. So when we have the data, that data is called as historical data. Now this historical data is having all the Y values. When I write a model using this historical data, and then I do the prediction, or I get the fitted value, when I use the historical data same as it is in my prediction model, then I get the fitted values, which are called as Y hat. The difference between them is called as error. Okay, so this is going to be my model error. Now if I split this historical data into 2 parts, one is called as train or training data, and one is called as testing. Now what I'm going to do is, if suppose I have 100 data points, observations in historical data, I will maybe put 70 observations in training set, 30 observations in testing set. I will write a model on this training set, prediction model, okay, and I will calculate the training RMSE. because this model is also going to give me a root mean square error. And then what I will do is these 30 observations which are not exposed to this model which has been built on these 70 observations, okay, I'm going to expose these 30 observations to that model which has built it on these 70 observations. So because this model is not known this data, it is going to give some predictions, okay, and those predictions are also going to give me the RMSE, because the difference between the original values in this testing data and the predictions, okay, is going to help me in calculating the RMSE. So this RMSE I called it as test RMSE. So I'll get training RMSE and testing RMSE, or to simply put, training error and testing error. Now this entire process is called as cross validation, which means that I am validating my model over here. I am validating my model on my test set, which is not seen by this model. Earlier what was happening up till now, what we were doing, we were writing a model and we are giving the same data to it, or we are simply predicting on by using the model. Okay, but here what we are learning is I'm going to split the data into two different parts. One set is called as training set, one set is called as testing set. Once the training set is ready, I will write a model with the training data and I will expose my testing data to that model, get the predictions, right? And the original values in the test data and the predicted values from the model on the test data is going to give me the testing RMSE, whereas the training RMSE is nothing but the difference between the original values in the training data and the fitted values. Okay, so there are these two terminologies. One is prediction, one is fitted. Fitted means when I predict on the same data. Prediction means when I predict on the new data. Okay, so let us understand now these two terminologies, how they are helpful, right, in the cross validation process. Okay, so I have two sets, training and testing. So I call my model, there is something called as overfitting and underfitting. So I call my model overfitting when my training RMSE is low and testing RMSE is high. I call my model as underfitting, or also called as a biased problem my model is having, when my training RMSE is high and my testing RMSE is also high. If such is the condition, then I call my model as underfitting model. When I call it as a just right model, when my training RMSE and testing RMSE is almost the same or have a very less difference between them, then I call it as my model is just right. Why? Because consider that you have been asked, suppose 5 people have been asked from our training or from the people who are watching this program. Out of you, if five of you have been asked to build an umbrella, and if suppose raining is happening over here and you 5 guys have built it umbrellas, and there are some people standing at the bus stop, so these are 5 people standing at the bus stop, so suppose like this, and then few people have built it the umbrellas, okay, out of which we are going to see 3 umbrellas. So one has built one umbrella like this, to save from this rain. One has built an umbrella like this, and one has built the umbrella like this. Now this is going to my overfit umbrella, because in this umbrella no 6% can enter, which 6% means nothing but my test data, and this is my training data. So this person has exactly fitted the umbrella in such a way that only these 5 people can exist. So obviously for these 5 people, always this umbrella is going to give the lesser RMSE. But for this test data, because they cannot enter into this model cannot accommodate this test data, so you are going to get the higher RMSE. This is going to be my just right model, because it is also every time it is going to accommodate the training data, and there is still scope, a lot of scope for test data as well. Test data can enter, a new person can enter in under this umbrella. But here, because it is a short distance umbrella, maybe few training sets can be accommodated, but testing set cannot be accommodated. Suppose someone is standing over here, he cannot be accommodated, which means the testing data is not accommodated, and even the training set not always is going to be accommodated. So in both the cases, what is going to happen? My RMSE is going to increase. Training and testing RMSE. This is the concept of overfitting, underfitting, and just right model. Right? And how to resolve this modeling? How to resolve these problems? So overfitting problem, if we are having, then it can be solved by removing a variable. So if there is an extra variable, then we can remove that variable and solve the overfitting problems. Right? How to solve the underfitting problem? So it can be solved by adding a variable. Right? So something like which we have done in the equation of curve, quadratic equation, if you remember in simple linear regression, where we have added a x square over there. Right? So these are the methods how we can avoid these problems of overfitting and underfitting and go towards the just right modeling. Right? Alright, so once we have understood this, let us try and do it once. Okay, so I am calling a CA tools library, and from the original cars data set, I am creating the new car data set, cars1 I am calling it as, and I am not going to consider the 77th observation in this, so the cars1 will be having 80 observations. Now this is my new data set over here. Now what I am going to do is I am going to use the sample.split function, where I am passing on any column of the cars1, and I am saying the split ratio I want as 70-30, which means I want to split this data into 70 and 30% for training and testing. So this is the split look like. Okay, so what this function does internally is it assigns a virtual values to true and false randomly to these 80 values. Okay, so all those true values are going to be my train set, all those false values are going to be my test set. Right? So if I plot a table of split, okay, table will give me the proportions. So there are 24 test observations and 56 training observations, right? And it is 70-30, right? So 70% of 80 and 30% of 80. That's the value. Okay. Now once I have done that, what I can do is I can use the subset function on cars1, and I am saying split wherever the split is matching with the true value, then it should belong to my cars train data set. Wherever my subset function I'm writing, and I'm saying that wherever my split value is matching with the false value, then that subset should be called as test. So my train and test subsets are ready. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to build my training model. And look at the difference over here, because we have already decided I don't want to wait. We have already removed the 77th variable because we have created a new data set called cars1. Cars1 we have split it into train and test. Now I also want to improve my model with cross validation. So what I'm doing is I'm building a model on cars.train. Right? Cars.train ke upar I am building a model. So this model is called as model.trend. This is the summary. And look at the R square now, it has jumped to 91, right? All three coefficients are significant. Let us check the summation of errors. Yes, it should be 0. Average of errors, yes, it should be 0, because e to the power 15 and 17, minus 17 and 15, sorry. And then we calculate the RMSE for training. So this is going to be my training RMSE, which is 2.73, right? And I can have a plot for this model, which is model.train, and you see over here they are identically distributed, all my errors except these two and this probably one or two. Now the second plot is going to be the QQ plot to check the normality, and look at that, except these two values and this may be third, okay, almost more than 90% of my errors are on the line or close to the line. This is going to give me the homoscedasticity and heteroscedasticity. So except few of the errors, these three errors, all my errors are having the constant variance as well, so that it shows that my model is good enough as far as model assumptions are concerned as well, right? Now if my model is good enough, now I'm going to use it on the test data, right? So I'm using a predict function, passing this model. This step we are doing I guess for the first time, okay? So using a predict function, passing a model name, and here I am passing a test data, right? And minus MPG I have written just to make you guys understand that this is not mandatory, but whenever to my model I pass this test data, it is automatically taken that MPG is the output variable from this test data itself, okay? So where is my test data over here? Okay, so cars.test, if I open, you see here it is having all these 5 variables, 24 entries, right? Now even though I don't remove this MPG, okay, but this model is only going to take the input variables, which is HP, volume, SP and weight, okay, from this. Just for explanation purpose I have written it, okay? Whether you write it or don't write it doesn't make any difference. All the predictions will be stored in the pred test. These are the predictions for all those 24 observations from the test data. So let me calculate the testing errors now. Testing errors are nothing but the original values from the test data for the MPG minus the pred test values, which are my predicted values. So my testing errors are stored in this variable. Now I can calculate the testing RMSE, and this is going to be my testing RMSE. My testing RMSE is 1.71 and my training RMSE was 2.73. So if you see here from this, you can very well say that our model is a just right model, because there is not a huge difference between the two values. Had it been something like 1.71 and 12.73 or 2.73 and 11.71, yes, we would have said that the model is not just right, but they are having a problem of overfitting, underfitting, bias versus variance, etc., etc. Right? So this is how multiple linear regression modeling can be done, and we have learned few techniques. There are so many more techniques and approaches are available. We are going to learn one by one throughout whenever I am going to create the learning videos, okay? And all those new concepts or techniques we can apply on the earlier modeling as well. For example, this splitting we can apply in simple linear regression also, right? So that can be done. All right, so we are predicting MPG in this particular business problem. So RMSE around 2 to 4. So in this example, it is somewhere around in between 1.5 and 3. Okay, maybe considered as okay. Okay, but of course we have to work on for the solutions to get it closer or lesser. So maybe if we try more transformations and do some different tricks, okay, which we are going to learn eventually, then probably we can take these figures down to maybe 0.7, this down to maybe 1.7. That is possible, right? And of course, the splitting which we have used over here is a random split, okay? But there are different splitting techniques also available. So something like k-fold is also there. K-fold is nothing but if you are having 100 records, 1000 records, and if you put the k value equal to 5, then it will create a 200 of each, okay? 200 set of 200 records of each 5 sets is going to be your 1000 records, okay? So 200 records will be considered at one time as your test set, and remaining 800 will be the training set, okay? And this will happen like this. So if I do this, if I use the k-fold technique, then how it will happen? So it's going to be something like this. If I have 1000 records, so I will create 3, 4 and 5 set of 200. I means that k-fold function is there which is going to do this, okay? Now in the first iteration it will put this as training and this as test. This is training, this is training, and this is training. So it has randomly chosen this 200 set of records as test data set. In the second iteration, it may choose this as test data set, and remaining 4 will be my training data set. Similarly, this can be there, and remaining will be training set. So in this way, it will write internally. It will do internally this type of splittings, and same model it will use. And then finally, what the models has to do is we have to calculate the average to calculate the errors. So this is another method, k-fold splitting, which can be used. So there are a lot of different approaches and techniques available when it comes to cross validation, right? So cross validation has to be done before going for finalization of the model. Always this step is important, even you are writing simple linear regression model or even the advanced models like random forest, right? So finalize or train the model with entire data before the deployment, which means if you split the data and now you have validated your model. So if you have finalized this model.train model to be deployed, then what you have to do is you have to use the entire data over here, which means entire data is nothing but the cars, okay? Of course, without weight and without those 2 observations, remaining 80 observations you will expose to this model, okay, and then deploy the model. So that step we will look. I am going to create another video on that. All right. So this is all for from today's session, right? So we have learned, we have also seen this bias versus variance problem, which is underfitting and overfitting. Okay, if we have a bias problem, then training and testing errors are high. If we have a overfit problem, then training errors will be high and testing will be low, right? And if we have the just right model, then it is all fine, right? So these are the solutions we have seen, how to fix them, right? And that's it for today's session as far as the multiple linear regression. I hope you have enjoyed this session, and if you have really enjoyed this session, then I would say that please do like my channel and like this video and share it with your friends and new learners. Basically whatever videos I am making on the initial basis is mostly will be helpful for those people who are new to the data science industry and are new learners, newcomers. Okay, for them I am creating all these helpful videos, and please do subscribe the channel so that you will not miss on any further new videos, learning videos which I am creating. I also have this Facebook page. You can also subscribe or like this page so that From here also you can be in touch with all the latest articles or videos I am posting, which will be helpful for learnings. Okay, you can also connect me through LinkedIn, right? And of course I have shared my number. You can anyway contact me through WhatsApp as well, right? So all the best, all the best very much to all of you guys. Thank you very much for joining it. Best luck.